Good morning. This is Ron. It is Friday, May the 4th. Welcome to Story Time. So, I've been one of the things that I find is that sometimes, usually, if I find myself irritated, annoyed, angry, kind of depressed, pessimistic, and a lot of times I'm wondering why. What I was happy yesterday, I was happy 5 minutes ago, an hour ago, whatever. Why am I all of a sudden down in the dumps? And I find increasingly that the answer is Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, et al. And the reason for this is because they're dealing with issues that I have no control over and that none of us have any control over. A classic example is from his show from yesterday. Michael Caputo attests to what I've told you the establishment is doing. Rush. So I got in last night. I played golf yesterday afternoon, went out, did some things. I got home and I had not looked at any of my email when I was gone. Not for any particular reason, just didn't do it. I got home and cleaned up, went down to the library, started to settle in for the evening's activities. Took my email inbox. I got emails from people you would know asking me, did you write Michael Caputo's talkers tonight with Tucker Carlson? And then I saw, did you happen to talk to Rudy before he went on with Hannity tonight? And I said, I don't know what any of this is about because I hadn't had the TV on. So I'm really curious now what the heck has happened. My old golf buddy Rudy Giuliani's on TV. And then I found out about all of this, and Michael Caputo was on two places last night. A former Trump campaign aide that worked very early in the campaign, primarily in New York. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Skip all this crap. Get to the heart of it. He's in the process of having to go out and find a job, hoping to recoup this and still have money to raise his kids. He says he needs to go out and earn $125,000 a year to try and replace what he lost defending himself in this investigation. We played the audio sound bites of that yesterday. So the point of it is that, and Caputo was basically saying, I'm not going to get involved in a Republican politics ever again. Rush Limbaugh is saying that this is part of he's saying it's the point of the investigation is to do this, to hound viable Republican people out of politics, not to be aides, not to run for office, etc. So uh, the problem with this, as far as him telling, is why are you telling me? Why are you telling your audience this? What am I supposed to do about this? What am I supposed to do about this? Well, should I send money to Mr. Caputo? Ostensibly, Mr. Caputo is connected. He has friends. He has friends in high places that can help him get a job, help him get the money back. Maybe he goes out and gives some speeches, writes a book, or something like that. But in any case, even if he doesn't have those resources available, what am I supposed to do about it? I'm a butcher, baker, candlestick maker kind of guy. Should I scrape together nickels and dimes? Should I get my penny jar out, and cash that in and send him a check for whatever it amounts to? There's nothing I can do about it. It's so frustrating that Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity are constantly on and on about things I have no power over, no control over. I end up with this Caputo thing. It's scary. It's anger. It makes me mad. And where am I going to go with that? What do I do? Rush Limbaugh, if he gets angry, he gets annoyed, he gets irritated, he gets on the radio. He gets on the radio and he uses that as therapy. He gets it out of his system. He rants and raves, yanks paper, in his hands, thumps his table, whatever he's going to do to, again, use it as therapy and get it out of his system. And in so doing, he dumps it on everybody else. So what am I supposed to do? Because according to him, there's nothing I can do except once every 2 years. Once every 2 years, I can go into the voting booth and have an indirect effect on what it is that's going on in Washington, D.C. So I end up driving around town flipping everybody off because I'm so pissed off from listening to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. So um, the I mean, again, there's nothing you can do about it. The place where the rubber hits the road is local. They say, actually, there's a saying that all politics is local, but it is local. It is dealing with my friends, my relatives, coworkers, people I meet in establishments that I frequent, at the soccer field, whatever, in my day-to-day business. That's where I can have a direct impact and a direct effect on the culture, not only the culture in my area, but very possibly have a ripple effect and affect the culture, um, very possibly in it. And if I can get other people to do the same, we can all affect the culture across the country. Change the culture, we change our politics. That's again one of the errors and one of the reasons Rush Limbaugh picks the topics he does is he's still convinced he's wrong, but he's still convinced that it is politics that shapes our culture. When in reality, the truth is it is the other way around. It is culture that shapes politics, and that you have to go out and learn how to deal with the socialists in your life. I have a lady that I know that operates a business that I frequent, and she's a socialist. She spends a lot of time watching The View, and she has a tendency to make these kind of vague socialistic statements. But the main feature of this lady is that she's thinks of herself as a leader and a change agent. I don't know how many of you remember this, but years ago, you would hear various Democrats telling people, they make speeches and claim you can be a leader, you can be a change agent. And a lot of a lot of Democrats that were listening to that take it seriously. They think, wow, I can have power. And that was a secondary message. We will empower you. And so, anyways, with this lady, what she has tendency to do, every relationship she has that I can see involves her bossing people around, telling people what they should do. You know what you should do? You should do this, that, and the other thing. And she doesn't just leave it at that. She goes ahead and follows up. So she'll tell you, well, you should do X. And then a couple of days later, she'll follow up and say, did you do what I told you to do? And if you haven't, she has a tendency to get disappointed, irritated, frustrated, and take that out on you. She has a person that works with her, a male, and she's constantly using him as, giving this person advice. He's got a lot of issues or problems, but she's constantly telling him what to do, where to go, and how to hang his laundry, and he ignores it for the most part. Sometimes he argues about it, but for the most part, he just ignores it. He refuses to do the things she tells him he should do. And it irritates her and annoys her to no end. She ends up getting, they have a pattern or dynamic in their relationship where the tension gets bigger and bigger. She gets more irritated with him, gets makes more sarcastic remarks, etc., until the point where he can stand it no longer. They have some kind of a big heated argument. She tosses him out of the store, and until things cool off, and then he comes back, offers her some kind of a gift or whatever, buys her a cup of coffee, and she lets him back into the store. And he's more or less of a volunteer. I don't think he's getting paid. So, but the point is, that's the way she operates, and she operates that way because she's a lefty. And she has been told by the left, we will empower you, and you can be a leader and a change agent. So the question is, how do you deal with somebody like that? I got to go into the store on a regular basis and see her. How am I going to deal with that when she starts telling me, and she's done it with me, what I should do, what I should do, where I should go, and how to hang my laundry? How do I deal with it? And one of the best answers I've found is You can do it if you, depending on the relationship you have with somebody, but let's just stick with her. Is tell her, oh, okay, if you want to help, here's what you can do. See, because part of what makes the situation rather irritating and annoying is that she bossing around means that she will not put any, quote, skin in the game, unquote. Okay, so she's not going to put any money, time, or energy into any of her suggestions. Oh, you should do this. Well, okay. Are you going to buy it for me? Are you going to go get it for me? Are you going to help in some way, shape, or form? No. She just expects you to obey. Well, I'm sorry, I'm an adult man. I don't have to obey anybody except obeying the laws, but I don't have to obey a parent figure, and that's what the way she's setting herself up. I don't have to do that. But and one of the other things to do if you're dealing with somebody in certain situations is you can say, look, you're not a leader, you're not a change agent. But I've known this woman for a while. Other than the bossing around, she's friendly, she's sociable, of course. Who's ever heard of a socialist that wasn't sociable? Well, Karl Marx, but that's another story. So I don't want to come off and be sharp. So I find again that if I simply say, oh, you want to help? Here's how you can help. This is what you can do. This is if you want to help, you can buy this, or you can go on to, your computer and do a search and find whatever. For instance, I'm looking at maybe buying a house soon. So one of her things, she likes to boss me around about that. And so I like to respond and say, oh, if you want to help, one of the things you can do is cosign. Another thing you can do is come up with a down payment. Why don't you give me, as a gift, a down payment? Another thing you can do is go online and see if you can find me a good real estate agent. So this kind of takes the edge off the bossiness. She isn't going to do that, of course, because the socialists like the idea of operating with impunity. Okay, so they boss you around and they don't have to accept the consequences. So, but again, the that I'm it's an example of real life situations. Uh, that's what needs to be getting across to people, to conservatives, to the anti-socialists in our society, is how to deal with the rank and file everyday socialist that you're going to meet in your life at work or otherwise out and about. So when I come back, it is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and this time, since I've already talked about Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity in my monologue, I'm going to skip reading, and I already read from his broadcast yesterday, an excerpt of a transcript. So instead, what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to reading. We concluded Ayn Rand's book, Philosophy Who Needs It. And so today, what I'm going to go ahead and do is read a from a Imprimis from a volume, October 2014, volume 43, number 10. So it's going back a few years, and it's an article called "The Case Against Liberal Compassion" by William Voegeli. So when we come back, I'll be reading that. So Imprimis is a pamphlet, more or less. It's a publication of Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is the only college in the United States of America that doesn't have to that doesn't accept any federal money. If you go to Hillsdale College, you can't even get federal loans. Okay, because they accept absolutely no federal money, no federal assistance. To the best of my knowledge, no state assistance either. And I was impressed with that. And they have a free newsletter called Imprimis, which is Latin and it means in the first place. So you can go to Hillsdale, look up, Google Hillsdale College, and you can find a way to get Imprimis free if you would like to. They will, of course, solicit you for donations, during the course of the year, but it's still free. So this volume and particular one is called "The Case Against Liberal Compassion" by William Voegeli, who's a senior editor of Claremont Review of Books, and it's adapted from a speech delivered at Hillsdale College on October 9th, 2014, sponsored by the college's Van Andel Graduate School of Statesmanship. 4 years ago, I wrote a book about modern American liberalism, Never Enough: America's Limitless Welfare State. It addressed the fact that America's welfare state has been growing steadily for almost a century and is now much bigger than it was at the start of the New Deal in 1932 or at the beginning of the Great Society in 1964. In 2013, the federal government spent $2.279 trillion, 7,200 per American, two-thirds of all federal outlays, and 14% of the gross domestic product on the five big program areas that make up our welfare state: Social Security, all other income support programs such as disability insurance or unemployment compensation, Medicare, all other health programs such as Medicaid, all programs for education, job training, and social services. That amount has increased steadily under Democrats and Republicans during booms and recessions. Adjusted for inflation and population growth, federal welfare state spending was 58% larger in 93 when Bill Clinton became president than it had been 16 years before when Jimmy Carter took the oath of office. By 2009, when Barack Obama was inaugurated, it was 59% larger than it had been in 1993. Let's see. Let me hold on here a second. Pages are sticky. Okay, overall, the outlays were more than 2.5 times as large. I'm going to skip all that because it's all the details. All along, while the welfare state was growing constantly, liberals were insisting constantly wasn't big enough or growing fast enough. So I wondered 5 years ago whether there was a platonic ideal when it comes to the size of the welfare state, whether there is a point at which the welfare state has all the money, programs, personnel, and political support it needs, thereby rendering any further additions pointless. The answer, I concluded, is that there is no answer. The welfare state is a permanent work in progress, and its liberal advocates believe that however many resources it has, it always needs a great deal more. And I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. The rest of it is just more details. But the basic essence of this is, and this is where Republicans again blow it. They get it wrong, and because they get it wrong, they unwittingly aid and abet the left. The whole purpose of welfare programs that we have is economic. It's not as much political as it is economic. The economic system we have is called Keynesian economics. When this country started, we were on I believe it was a bimetallic standard, gold and silver. They actually used gold and silver coins. And so when you went and bought something, you used gold and silver coins to purchase it. As the years went by, they introduced paper money, and the paper money was backed to one degree or another by usually gold bullion. So you had a bank and you got printed money from the bank. All those dollars that you had could be taken to the bank and traded in for specie, for gold. We finally got to the point in the 1970s when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard pretty much for good. And thanks to an economic system by Sir Maynard Keynes, and he was an English economist who came up with the idea of creating an inflationary economic system that is paper-based, that we get rid of all the gold and you just have paper, because the whole idea of the system is to get rid of recessions and depressions and create ever increasing prosperity, so that I do better than my parents, my children do better than I do, etc., etc. Okay, this has been a Crowleyist fantasy since the early 1900s. Herbert Crowley wrote a book called The Promise of American Life, and he claimed in that book, without any evidence or proof, that the promise of American life was ever increasing prosperity. No such thing. It doesn't exist. He just pulled it out of thin air. In any case, Keynes took that seriously and looked to create an economic system that would do just that, that would create ever increasing prosperity. And his solution was folding money because it's printable. You can go out and print it, and that every time there was the threat of a recession, then the government would come out and start printing money in order and spend that money in order to be able to stave off any type of a major contraction. And so that was the way it was supposed to work in theory. And in practice, it has been an utter failure, a complete and utter failure. We've had recession after recession after recession. Usually every 3 years or so, we go into a recession. The last one, of course, was in 2008. They don't use the word depression anymore, although I think the one in 2008 could probably rightfully be called a depression. Probably meets the definition, and the definition has to do with how many quarters of negative growth there are. But the point is that we're still in the same kind of what they call a boom and bust cycle that we were when we had a gold standard. So there's no reason really to continue with this. But the point is, with regards to welfare state, is that when you're creating a paper economy, then the economy has a tendency to be inflationary. The value of your money has a tendency to decrease, and the prices have a tendency to go up. Okay, fine and dandy for the people that are working. If you're working and you're getting regular bonuses, you're getting regular raises, then the inflation, as long as it's under control, it's not outrageous, isn't such a big deal. But what about the people that are poor? What about the people that work at the lower end of the economic spectrum? Well, that's why you want to have a minimum wage, so that, again, and raise that minimum wage every so often to keep ahead of inflation. Everything in life becomes about keeping ahead of inflation. Excuse me. So, um, and what do you do then? What does the government do if they're going to assume responsibility for the economy? What do they do about people that are, again, on the lower end, the poor? And what do they do about people on fixed incomes? You know, if the government is going to feel free to inflate the money supply and raise prices, thereby, what do you do with the people that are on fixed incomes? You have to have an answer for that. That's where Social Security comes in. That's where Medicare comes in. And then, of course, you have what they call cost of living adjustments for Social Security and Medicare. Because once you're retired, by and large, that's it. You get a certain distribution every month, and that's it. If inflation devalues that distribution, too bad. So the government has to morally come up with an answer to that. Same thing with the poor. What about the people that are on the lower end of the economic spectrum? If we're constantly inflating the money supply and we're increasing prices, how are the poor going to deal with that? That's where welfare and food stamps come in. And again, that the Republicans, if they knew and understood that, and the conservatives, they would be pushing for a return to the gold standard. Because without a return to the gold standard, there is no choice but to continue the welfare programs and to continue Social Security and continue all of these giveaway programs in the face of potential, excuse me, inflationary economic system. So, moving to the gold standard, the economy has a tendency to be deflationary. Your money has a tendency to gain value. So, people on any end of the political spectrum don't need welfare, and not only do they not need welfare, they don't need a bank, and they don't need Wall Street. That's the other things that we need now. Because of an inflationary economic system, we need banks because they provide interest as a hedge against inflation. We need Wall Street because Wall Street provides an even better hedge against inflation. That's the way you're going to basically stay ahead of inflation these days, is with Wall Street. The problem, of course, with Wall Street is that it's a risky deal. There's all kinds of people and players in Wall Street that can do something stupid or foolish that can ruin your savings, ruin your potential retirement. So it's much riskier. If you had a gold standard economy, your money is going to have a tendency to gain value without having to do anything. You can stick it under your mattress, and it will have a tendency to gain in value. And so you don't need banks, and you don't need Wall Street. And, of course, you don't need welfare. So when I come back, it's going to be time for the New York City cab driver's joke book. Okay, I'm back, and now it's time for the segment of the New York City cab driver's joke book. An older man's wife dies, and a number of years later, he decides he would like to remarry. Just a second here. Hold on. After that, he meets a woman he likes very much, so he proposes to her. Before I can give you my answer, says the woman, I must tell you a few of my needs. First of all, I must have a condominium in Florida. No problem, says the man. I already have a condominium there. Also, she says, I must have my own bathroom. You've got it, he says. The woman then looks the man in the eye. And sex, she says. Infrequently, replies the man. The woman thinks for a moment, then says, is that one word or two? Did you hear about the Polish man who locked his keys in the car? It took him nearly a week to get his family out. Two men, both 1 year away from retirement, are working on an assembly line. One says to the other, last night I made love to my wife 3 times. 3 times, says his friend. How did you do it? It was easy, says the first man. I made love to my wife, and then I rolled over, took a nap for 10 minutes. I woke up, I made love to my wife again, then rolled over, took another nap for 10 minutes. I woke up, I made love to my wife again, and then I went to sleep. I woke up feeling like a bull. His friend says, well, that is fantastic. I'm going to have to give that a try. So he goes home that night and he goes to bed. He makes love to his wife, then rolls over and takes a nap for 10 minutes. He wakes up, makes love to his wife again, then rolls over and takes another nap for 10 minutes. He wakes up, makes love to his wife again for a third time, then rolls over and falls asleep. He wakes up in the morning and he's 20 minutes late for work. He throws on his clothes and runs down to the factory. When he gets to his station, the boss is standing there waiting for him. The man says, Boss, I've been working for you 20 years and I've never been late before. You've got to forgive me these 20 minutes this one time. The boss says, what 20 minutes? Where were you Tuesday? Where were you Wednesday? Who had the first computers? Adam and Eve. Eve had the apple and Adam had the wang. And that will conclude this episode of Story Time. And thank you very much for joining me. And until tomorrow, have a great day.